Welcome, game dev adventurers, to the Indie Game Lunch Hour. Today we're talking with Sydney Clara about how to be satisfied with your art when you're never satisfied with your art. It's something none of us have ever experienced before.
The Indie Game Lunch Hour.
Welcome all to our live magical podcast where we give game developers the chance to hear stories breaking in from industry experts, as well as directly ask them questions about their areas of expertise in the second half of each episode. As always, I'm your host here, Willem Delventhal, the headmaster at the Indie Game Academy, and joining me today is Sydney Clara. Sydney is a game dev among many other things. I will allow yourself to introduce yourself, and is here to talk with us about exactly that. How to be satisfied with your art when you're never satisfied with your art. The age-old problem. I'm interested, listeners and those in the audience, how many of you consider yourselves artists? I know that I very much consider myself an artist, and I very much view game developers as artists. So without further ado, Sydney, what are you having for lunch today?
Oh man, I had so much time to think about this question and I still don't have an answer. I think that I am going to have something at this restaurant that I'm going to later when I'm seeing a concert, but I don't know what it's gonna be.
Hey, that's pretty cool. What concert are you seeing?
OK Go, which
Okay.
I saw them a million years ago. They should be fun live. They do a lot of performance. Yeah, you know.
Nice. That's cool. And have you looked at the menu yet? Or do you have any vibes? Feeling burgers? Maybe something healthy?
Truly no idea. It might be a pizza experience. I don't really know. Whatever it is, I'm eating before I go to the concert. So I don't want to eat like a huge meal and then go to a concert and then bounce around. So I have to really plan this meal based on the activities I'm doing right after.
Strategize. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That makes sense. You can let us know after the fact. We'll put it in the description for anyone who is really wanting to know what you had for lunch before the concert. All right. So on this show, the place that we love to start to get acquainted with you is to hear the origin story. So, Sydney, we would love to hear what you do in the industry, what you do in life, and then how you got there.
Yeah, I have a really super fun origin story. I have been working in the film industry for about a decade. I live in New York, and I came here to go to film school. I did a ton of stuff in film on set and editing and color grading and making my own little short films. And then the pandemic happened, which I'm sure everyone remembers, and things got a little mixed up. I got furloughed and I ended up getting really sick. And so since the pandemic, I ended up spending a lot of time playing video games and streaming them. And then in terms of work things, I moved over to marketing and community management and social media, because you can do those remotely. And while all of this is going on, I'm playing all of these games that I had missed, because I was always a gamer, but when I was in college and when I was working on set, I never had time to play games. So I'm replaying games that I really liked as a kid, playing new games that I completely missed, like Alien Isolation or Dishonored, big ones. And then on top of that, I'm finding all of these incredible indie games by solo devs, and it really kind of opened up this world to me that I didn't have the same understanding of what a game could be before I started playing all of these games, because I really was not introduced in any way to the indie game world. And so since then, it's sort of been the slow build up, but this past summer I really decided to just kind of jump in and make my own game, and I did, and here we are. But I would say it's sort of been a very windy road to doing, in some ways, the same storytelling that I've kind of always really enjoyed doing. Just different mediums and formats.
Yeah, lovely. I think a lot of storytellers wind up doing exactly that. We sort of flow state through a bunch of different places. I know I'm a absolutely huge, avid audiobook listener. I love my fantasy books. I love my sci-fi books. I have half a dozen books somewhere in my brain that I'll probably never write, but I absolutely love the concept of trying my hand out at writing, because games are a medium for exactly that: storytelling, conveying a message, delivering myself unto my players in some degree. And it just so happens that this is the medium that, I have chosen to master versus all of the other wonderful ones out there.
Yeah, and it's really interesting too, because for the first time, I saw Mickey 17, and it really was the first time that I watched a movie and thought, this probably would have made a better game, which is not something that I had kind of that lens before. But I completely believe, Mickey 17 is a really fun film, but I do think it, in a perfect world, should have been a game. And so now it's really interesting to kind of have a bit more experience, just playing a lot more games and then looking at stories and thinking, is this the right medium for this story? Or could it have been potentially something else that would have been, better suited to actually, craft that story?
Yeah, I love that as a concept, because it's true. For the longest time, well, maybe not entirely true. I think there's a trend where games that get made into movies are not great. I just saw the Until Dawn movie, and it was fine. We laughed about how bad it was, and so that's an enjoyable experience on its own. But
that was weird, because they don't even. It's not even the original. They just take the name, and they're like, okay, sure. It doesn't even really count as an adaptation.
I agree. I knew of Until Dawn, and all the movie really made me want to do is actually go and play Until Dawn, which I guess is the objective. Success? Yeah. Maybe? Yeah. But I do think that, as you say, there's it's something that I don't think I ran into until a decent way through my career. The targeting of a story, that stories fit on different platforms, stories fit in different medium, and stories also fit different creators. I had a really eye-opening experience where I was trying to write a love story about lesbians into a sim-like game that I was working on. And my design manager at one point said, Willem, do you really think you should be the person writing this story? And I was like, you're probably right. And I gave that one up to another developer. But yeah, the sort of the nuance of taking your story to the right place and accepting that not all stories are for every place. I like that. All right. Now, I wanted to first actually hear about this game that you were working on. Tell us about this game that you built, and a little bit more about your exploration into game dev.
Yeah. So this is my first game. It's QUALIA. It's a text-based game. And really, because I came, again, film industry, zero programming knowledge, I kind of thought, okay, what can I do 100% myself, right? I am going to learn a game engine like Unreal and Unity. I'm going to do that. But I wanted to kind of not have that be an excuse for not making something. And so I went to the bare minimum of education that would be required to make a game, which I used Twine, and I had some knowledge of HTML and CSS playing Neopets as a kid. So I was like, okay, this is in my brain somewhere. I can bring this back out. I can kind of build upon fundamentals that I already have. And I know that I'm a strong writer. I'm confident in my writing ability. So I will focus the entire game on that. So I don't need to worry about an artist. I don't need to worry about hiring anyone else. And I will just use all stock footage, all stock photos, and see how far I can get making something just with my own skills. I asked many people along the way for help with programming. I did end up commissioning Justin Oval, an incredible artist and musician, to make a really very emotional song for the end credits. But aside from that, it was really just me on my laptop in a cave for around about 6-ish months. And I don't know, I think it was something where I made the game, a really very simple version as a prototype, and I sent it to a friend of mine who's a game dev, and he's like an old god, retired guy now, and I was like, okay, I made this, is this worth making into a game? And he was like, well, yeah, obviously. And I thought, okay, cool. So I have one person that thinks that this is worthwhile. I'm going to keep doing it. And interestingly enough, that original prototype, I still have it, is very, very, very similar to part of the final product. I really didn't change that much. I just styled it a fuck ton, because when Twine spits out a file originally with no styling, it's just a black page with white text. And it was okay, I'm going to make sure that this game feels not like a text game, which is why I also made it like a quiz-based thing where the player is really immersed in the action. It's not like you're reading a story and choosing the direction of the story. You're the character. You're the player character. You're the person actually controlling the game. And all of these like things come together, and I was like, okay, this has to be sort of the final product in my head. Which again, we'll talk about the in my head versus in real life. But I think it was really a very, very like rewarding, I'll say, experience making this game, because it is very intimidating to make a new thing, like an entirely new medium, when you've been working in a different medium for like a decade. But it really was less scary once I started doing it. It was the initial fear that I think was really, oh no, a new thing. But then once you get into it, I don't know, it became a lot easier as I went. And then really the very scary part afterwards was like, oh wow, how do I use Steam? Like, how do I put this on Steam? Which was like another entire process, because you're technically not supposed to put HTML games on Steam, but you can anyway. You can trick Steam. But yeah, I don't know. It was really fun.
I love that. There's a lot that I want to pull out of this. So one of the things that I've been like meditating on lately, or that I've been saying to people lately, is designers are problem solvers too. Game developers of all forms are problem solvers, and there's a lot of problems through the game development process that we solve. As an artist, you're going to have to solve, how does the engine handle the like graphic fidelity that we're aiming for, or how can I crank out the number of assets? What's a visual style I can create that allows me to create the number of assets I need to make for this game in the budget that there is. And every department has that same sort of problem solving. And solo devs sort of do all of that all at once. And something that I love about your story that I want everybody to hear is the problem you solved first was, how do I do this on my own? What am I capable of doing on my own? And that is exactly what professional game studios do too. They go, all right, we got 5 people and they do these 5 things, and we got like 6 months of runway. What can we build? That's a huge part of the game development process. And I urge every single person, because I know many of you are like, many of you listeners are at least thinking about making games. And most of you have at least tried it. But if you have not yet tried it, I urge all of you to believe in yourself that there is a game you are capable of building totally on your own. Perhaps it's even like a board game or something. And that you're totally capable of doing so. So I love that you just went, all right, what can I make? And then you went for it. I love too that you sort of pulled in the resources that you had available. You had a mentor to go to and talk about this with. And I love that you, created something that you were proud of at the end of the day. Is for those who are listening, can we get access to this game?
Absolutely. It's free on Steam. It's free on itch. If you don't have a computer, you want to play it on an iPad or something. It's called QUALIA. If I was prepared, I could drop the link. Give me a second.
How do you spell it?
QUALIA. I got it.
QUALIA.
There we go. I got it. Woohoo!
Nice.
Yes. It's called QUALIA. It's, I would say, depending on how fast you read, like a 30 to 90-minute game.
Okay.
But totally free. Play it on literally anything. Steam Deck.
Amazing.
Whatever.
That's another big call out, actually, is people always be trying to make like a 20-hour game, a 40-hour game. Y'all, a 20-minute long experience that's delightful is wonderful. That's all you need to make. You don't need to try. You don't need to try to tell us an Odyssey. It's okay.
Well, it's funny because in my like filmmaking era, I'll say, I really specialized in 1-minute short films. So I'm very accustomed to, and I actually love making really short stories, because I think there is something particularly like magical about being able to tell a story in like a really short format, as opposed to something that's like a feature length film, or like a 30-hour game. Although, interestingly enough, 30 I would say is almost like mid-sized at this point. I think like 3 hours is probably the perfect size for a game. Something about that I think really works, because you could do it in one sitting and you still get enough to have like a really beefy like amount of time you get to spend in a story.
Feels like a game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally agree. That's actually there's been a lot of movement in the game industry towards that direction. A lot of people seem to be feeling like we're moving more towards 3 to 5 hour games. We're moving more towards short, bite-sized experiences rather than something that's really in depth. For the Foundry games at the Indie Game Academy, our three higher end student teams, they're all aiming for 3 to 5 hours, and they're doing that in about a year. All right, now we haven't officially stepped into the topic of the day: how to be satisfied with your art when you're never satisfied with your art. I imagine if that's the topic that you propose to us, Sydney, there must be some mixed feels about this game.
Well, I think it's always so. I mean, it's always going to be, and this is exactly like the whole point of the topic, right? It's little things here and there that build up to like, just as someone who, I would say I call myself a perfectionist in a way that is like not a compliment. I will always look at the final product, and I will always see the things that I wish I could have done. Instead of like looking at it and being like, wow, look at all the things that I was able to achieve. I'll always be like, oh, but I didn't get to do that one thing because you can't combine those two HTML effects in Twine. Like, that's the thing that I'll think about. And so it's something where, in a way, everything that I'm in my head, everything that I make is like, it has the potential to be like redone again perfectly in some alternate universe, right? Like if there's some insane billionaire that's like, I'm going to pay you to remake this, it's going to be like, perfect. I know exactly what I'm going to do differently. But all of it is really like depending on the situation when it was originally made. So I think in a lot of ways, this version of QUALIA is the best version that this one could ever be. But in alternate futures, it could be any number of things, right? I could have made this exact same story in Unity, and I could have a completely different experience, and it wouldn't necessarily be better, but I could do more, and I could do different things that I am maybe thinking about. Oh, that would be so great if, like, you as a character could actually walk around, and you could actually experience, like, the test. Instead of being at your computer, you could actually, like, use your controller. You could actually, do it. And I think all of that is like something that, at least for me, I'll never be able to like not think about. I don't know if it's the same for other people. I don't want to like talk for every artist, but I will maybe make assumptions based on having spoken to other artists that I think a lot of people will always think about the perfect version in their head of what their thing can be. But that perfect thing can only exist if like every single condition around it happens perfectly. And that never happens in any way. And usually a lot of times, if you read IMDb trivia, a lot of times things will happen where, like they couldn't do this one thing, so this other thing happened, and then it turns out that other thing ends up being better than the original thing that they wanted to do. So in a lot of ways, like the perfect version of your thing is not the way that you envision it. It's sort of the way that it ends up happening, because having it exist at all is really the perfect like endpoint. There's no way that you not making the thing is better than you making it, even if you making it is not the version that you had in your head.
I love that. This is such a good sentiment. I'm glad we're spending an episode on this. All right. So this is one that some listeners who've listened to the majority of episodes may have heard before. So my mom, now retired, was a theater professor. And spent a long time working with actors. And one of my favorite quotes from her, which I use in my classes, I fully steal it, is "Done is beautiful." There's so much that potentially stops you from finishing a project. There are so many pitfalls, both externally, like, man, this getting friggin' HTML into Steam is such a nightmare. And then I think more importantly in this case, internally, like, I'm really not feeling satisfied with the level of quality I've hit. There's so many things that'll stop you from releasing a project. And at the end of the day, you are quite literally achieving more than probably 90% of people who started by just releasing the damn thing. So I love that. Done is beautiful, especially early on in your career, or if you're just career transitioning. But honestly, your entire career, stop worrying so much about making it perfect and just finish the damn project.
I mean, that's literally something that since sort of like, I'll say like joining the game industry, I've spent so much time talking to literally everyone I possibly can. And a lot of the game devs that I talk to have been working on these massive, epic games for many, many, many years. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I do think that at a certain point, well, at least when I introduce myself, and they tell me a lot about what they're doing and how they've been working on a game for 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Then I will say, oh, that's amazing. I just made my first game in 6 months. They'll kind of be like, I hate you. And it's something where it's not like either one of us is doing something right or wrong. It's just a matter of sometimes you really get in your head about the thing that you're making. And it would be so easy for me to spend 5 years on the game that I made. I could 100% keep adding things forever. But at a certain point, I think it is really important to say, okay, this version is done, and I am, as I will say the topic is, I am happy enough. I'm happy enough with this, which means that because my standards are impossible, other people will not notice that it is a different version in my head. They'll be satisfied with what I've made. Mm-hmm. And that is a really, really hard thing to trick yourself into, because I still don't believe that, right? I'm like, well, no, they're going to be more judgmental than me. And if I am already thinking it's not perfect, they're going to hate it. And I think that's what goes through a lot of people's heads, where they're like, well, I have this thing, I've been working on it for 5 years. Now the expectations are so massive that nobody's going to like it. And I have to keep working on it. And I have to make it perfect. At the end of the day, you will not be very happy because you have worked on this thing and you'll never meet your own expectations. And I think in some ways that's okay, but I would always recommend, while you're making this crazy 5-year game, also do some game jams. Just do something that can feel very enriching, that you've completed a thing and the expectations are non-existent, and it can suck. It could be the worst game anybody's ever made, but you've made it. And I think that's okay. And that's a big thing that I used to tell people in film, because a lot of people would be like, you made a 1-minute film by yourself? What do you mean? How do I do that? How do I be a filmmaker? And so really the answer is just make stuff. You just have to make it. That's the thing. You can ignore everything else. Just make the thing, put it out there, or don't put it out there, but just finish it and then be satisfied that you made a thing at all, even if it's the worst thing. Because that's really the hardest part, is finishing it.
Yes. Yeah. Just make games. So by the way, I have never experienced this. I've been fully, completely satisfied with every project I've ever released. So this is very foreign to me. Mm-hmm. There's a /S there if anybody's confused. I fully believe in this one. This is a big part of why the Indie Game Academy even exists. Just getting people to freaking release a game and get it out there. I think it's worth noting that there's coming at each game project and sitting down and asking yourself what the primary objective is for this game as it relates to you is a good place to start, because for many of you, the Indie Game Academy as a community, I feel like has been skilling up, which is really cool. We have more and more really experienced devs in here, but we still absolutely have our juniors and our people who are just transitioning or just making their first games. And if you're in that part of your development, adventure, it is way better for you to just get the games done and in a pretty rapid or short period of time, learning the entire development process and learning to get the game launched. Because that really is where most people falter, because they get nervous about pressure. They get nervous about people judging their games or whatever, or they just get stuck trying to make HTML work on Steam. If you finish the entire development process, that's way more valuable for you in an educational way than anything else. So sitting down and saying, all right, this is a learning project, and then giving yourself a deadline, I find really valuable. And keeping that deadline, especially early on, to just a couple of months. I'm going to give myself 3 months for this, 2 months for this, 1 month for this, and maybe as long as 6. But 6 months, I think, that's starting to push where I would really recommend you be for any kind of learning project. If the project is a love song, if the objective is, I want to make my dream game that I've just had in the back of my head for 10 years, then great. But, be realistic about that timeline. If you're going to commit 5 years to it, then great. All right. What an investment. Amazing. But just what happens all the time is I see people basically just lying to themselves. This is going to be a 6-month game, and then they are still working on it 5 years from now. In some ways, that's okay. None of us get the actual scope estimates right when we first try to estimate our projects. But it's worth asking yourself, what am I trying to get out of this game? And then when am I going to get it done by? I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah, I mean, I think really, and I've only done one game jam, so I'm not gonna say that I'm an expert on it. They have a lot of overlap with like 48-hour film challenges, which I used to do a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's always something really, really like secretly or not, very, very beneficial about doing those types of exercises because, I mean, you get to work with people, which is always good. But realistically, it's just an excuse to make something that has zero strings attached. You can make, again, the worst thing ever, but you've only spent a weekend on it. So that's okay. And it's giving you a lot of restrictions. So if it's a type of game jam where it's like, okay, we're going to give you the topic, you know, the day it starts, and then you have that specific thing you have to work with, that's a really good mental exercise to sort of force yourself to create. Oh my God, his foot is caught on my thing. Okay. To create, sorry. To create like a story, a piece of art, something that is in a really, really, really small box. You don't have to kind of worry about all these other things that are intimidating, right? Oh, how am I going to come up with the perfect story? You kind of completely avoid the blank page thing where it's, you have to make a story about cars. Okay, I don't know anything about cars, but at least I know it has to be about cars. And I'm only going to spend 48 hours doing this, or a week, or however long your game jam is. And so doing those, I think, like, I don't know, every couple months or like when you can, just giving yourself permission to do that type of exercise. And it doesn't have to be an official game jam. You could just force yourself to do it without, you know, an actual project. But I think having, it's kind of like going to the gym, I guess, right? All of us, we could all work out at home. We could all do all of those things 100% by ourselves. We could be using soup cans as weights, right? Literally, we have no excuses. But gyms exist because people don't want to do that at home. They need to go to a place where they have to do the thing, and they can't do anything else but that thing. They need to go to a workout class where somebody is telling them, we're going to work out right now all together for an hour. We're all going to do it, guys. And then you leave, and then you don't have to worry about the gym when you're not at the gym. I think it's just like that, but for your brain, right? You kind of have to force yourself to be in a situation where the only thing that you can do is that thing. Because, I mean, I don't know, I'm very impulsive. I don't go to the gym, I don't work out, right? So the only time that I can force myself to do that thing is in a situation where I am literally forced to do that thing. And I think doing that, but for your art, is really undervalued. And a lot of people look at game jams like, oh, I don't have time, or, oh, you know, I used to do them a lot when I was younger, and now I'm like a really super successful, you know, game dev person. I think that is, I don't want to say short-sighted because that sounds really mean, but there was never an excuse not to exercise your brain in that way. And I think that might be your secret weapon, is that you can do these things at any point, and I think that they will only be beneficial to you. I mean, there are some incredible games that came out of game jams, and if you didn't know, I guess you would know, right? Like Arctic Eggs was originally a game jam game. Rat Shaker was originally a game jam game, but they became something better because the devs and the team were like, wow, I really like this project. I made it in a short amount of time. I'm going to keep working on it. And now look at them, right? Who knows what could happen from your little game jam games?
I love that. Yeah. I think the game jams, first of all, are just amazing. Second of all, do them. They're amazing. Third of all, they're really amazing. Do them. There's so many different places to find game jams. Ludum Dare made a return. We all thought it was gone, and it's back. Global Game Jam is amazing. Our community manager, or should I say our chief of operations now, works at Global Game Jam. Go hang out with them. And then also we have, of course, itch.io/jams. There's so many different things. Oh, there is a jam coming up. Hamna, do you want to talk about it, or are you just reminding me to talk about it? Yeah. We do indeed have a game jam coming up. Oh, you wanna? Okay, great. We'll let you. Hamna, get up here. And yes, it's a super valuable practice. I freaking love game jams. I've been itching to do a solo jam, actually, because I've been practicing design leadership. So I keep putting together giant game design teams to continue to get practice in that. Hi, Hamna. But lately I've been like craving solo dev. So that's going to be my next jam. Tell me, Hamna, what do we got?
Game Jam!
Oh my God. Can you tell me more detail in a way where the audience will be able to understand what you just said?
Hi. So IG is going to host the Game Jam soon. I'm working on this page as we speak. That is literally why I opened up this podcast, because I was having anxiety just working on the H page. It's going to be up soon. So I can't.
What is the Game Jam, Hamna?
Okay, the Game Jam is going to be somewhere around a week-long jam. There's going to be insane cool prizes. Hint, it might or might not be in Unity. Hint, it might or might not have cool Unity prizes. But yeah, it's page coming soon. All right, bye.
All right. Thanks, Hamna. So we do indeed have a jam coming up. We may or may not be partnering with Unity to run that jam. We may or may not have prizes that are worth pretty serious amounts of cash. That'll be mid-June. By the time you're listening to this podcast, if you're listening, there will be a link down below to join the itch page. We'd love to have you in. We haven't run a jam in a while. All right. I've been talking about stuff for a while. Sydney, do you have a question of the day to get some people thinking about a cool topic?
I do. And what's really funny is I looked at the examples that you sent and I thought, I could do that, but I'm just going to do a completely different thing. So something that happens in my game, and it's something that I thought about years ago. I love asking people very philosophical questions that don't necessarily have a right or wrong answer, that really just get them thinking about the world and existing, and in a way tries to snap them out of the Matrix pod that they're in. So an example, this isn't a question, because I'm going to use one that I actually didn't come up with, but is one of my favorites. But an example is is lemonade juice? That's in my game, and it causes a lot of debate between friends, depending on what your answer is. But the one that I did not come up with, but I really like it, is, are there more doors or windows?
Just like in the world?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this is a departure. I love it. So for everybody in the audience and those listening after the fact, the question of the day is, are there more doors or windows? Period. Give us the answer in the chat and give us an explanation, because Sydney's going to have to pick their favorite. If you are listening, speak out loud your answer and why. All right, let's ask a couple of community questions while we wait for people to think on that one. We've got Joker of Aces. Joker wants to know, would you or have you ever considered trying to create a project or game in multiple engines to test art or recess optimization, just to find the, quote, perfect engine?
Not yet, only because I need to teach myself other engines. I'm in the process of learning Unreal, because one of my next games that I'm going to be working on, I think I'm going to do an Unreal, and then one of my other games that I'm working on with somebody else is going to be done in Unity. So I really trying to decide what those engines would be. I picked Unity for the one because that's what my programmer uses, and it was sort of like, okay, we're going to use Unity because you know how to do Unity. But the one that I'm doing by myself, I really was like, okay, I guess I could use any engine. And I asked around, and people really kind of gave me advice and told me the differences between the two engines, and so it kind of seemed like Unreal was going to be the best option for that specific game. But in reality, I think it's something where you probably could do a bunch of mini test versions in different engines, but I don't want to say that wastes time, but it might. I don't know. I guess I would do research first before actually making the thing. Because there are. So here's a good example. This is on my maybe future game list, but I would love to make a Game Boy game. And I was trying to think of what engine to use for that, because it's okay, I could do RPG Maker. I know there's mods you can put in Unity to then make an old-fashioned Game Boy game. Or there is just Game Boy Studio, I think is what it's called. You can just do the traditional Game Boy version. Mm-hmm. And I don't know which version is best for that yet. But I am not going to worry about it now. But it's something where it's okay, I guess I'm going to do as much research as I can to feel what would be the best end product. But also, I mean, having not spent a lot of time in engines yet, I don't know if the engine is maybe controversial. I don't know if the engine matters that much. Maybe it does, but I don't know if that really is a huge thing, right? Unreal and Unity seem to be really, really similar. So if it's like between those two, I don't know if it makes a difference.
I as a man who started as an engineer and then moved into game design, I can tell you that it really doesn't matter that much. It does sort of in some cases. Doug in the audience says the best engine is the one you know and is capable of making the game you want. I think that's basically it. So there are definitely cases where it does matter which engine you use. For example, when I was working at Lumosity, we switched engines a couple of times for some serious reasons. We were a web-first company. We had the majority of our users on web, and the games were only a minute to 2 minutes, maybe max 3 minutes long. So that meant that any load time was problematic, because if you were only playing the game for a minute and you had to wait even 10 seconds, that's like a heinous amount of load time. You're loading for a sixth as long as you're actually playing the game. And so in that case, we realized that Unity actually was not the right engine, because it has such atrocious, especially web load times. And so we used Cocos instead. So there are cases where like engine matters, but for the most part, especially for those who are just starting, it really doesn't matter. At this point, I do recommend it's either Unity, Godot, or Unreal that you learn, but that's mostly just because those are the three that people know, and so you'll have the most shared language, and you'll be able to kind of transition that knowledge the easiest. But ultimately, like, just pick the one that feels right. Definitely do a little research, because there are differences, and they do tend to do different things slightly better, slightly worse. But you can make mostly any game with any engine, and it's all going to be good. I think Doug's answer is actually pretty perfect.
Yeah, that's a really good answer.
Yeah. All right. I've got a question for you, actually. All right. So that moment where you go, hey, this is the good enough version of this art. How do you art that? How do you make that decision? How do you know when it's good enough?
I think it really is just kind of something where you feel like, I don't know, you kind of just feel like, okay, I'm ready. Like, I did so much playtesting with QUALIA. I brought it to almost like every single Gumbo playtest. I sent it to so many people, and at a certain point, like, just the player, I guess, feedback that I was getting was really so minuscule or so specific that I thought, okay, people don't have like huge issues with this game. Right now it's getting into the category of like personal opinion based on like style or aesthetic or things like that. And so once I kind of hit that point, I kind of thought, okay, well, nobody had any crazy issues with the game. I'm not like fixing, huge story problems or big bugs anywhere. Am I satisfied with this story? Am I missing any pieces? And even though the answer is still always going to be a little bit of yes, or a mid-level satisfaction. It was something where I kind of thought, like, okay, I'm just gonna take a risk. I don't know how to explain it. You kind of just feel like, okay, this one is fine, right? Like, I'm happy enough with this version of it, and that satisfaction level, I guess, hits like above 50, 60%, maybe.
Yeah.
That's actually a really hard question, because I don't know. You kind of just know, I guess.
Yeah. I think there's sort of two answers here. There's like the project manager answer, and then there's the like real normal human beings answer. The project management answer is, well, you've defined what your game is meant to be and the features and scope that'll be included in that game, and once you hit those things, you're done and you launch it. And usually you have a launch date, and so there's a bit of a negotiation between those two things. So when you get to your launch date, if all those features aren't done, you make a judgment call. Is it good enough? We're going to launch anyway. Is it not good enough? Maybe we're going to push that launch date. That's like a little bit more, air quotes here, professional of a way to look about it. But I think for many of us here, we're working on personal projects. We're working on projects that don't really have a hard launch date. And in that case, I don't think this is very art, not science. Like, it's at some point you go, I think this is good enough. And there's stuff that I could keep working on. I think actually for me, it's always somewhat related to burnout. I'm just like, yeah, I'm kind of done working on this. I'm going to accept that this is as far as I'm going.
I think, in reality, and it depends on the type of artist you are. At least I'll say for me as like a writer and storyteller primarily, there is usually a point when I'm making something where I start thinking about like my next thing, and I start spending more time in my brain ideating on a new thing versus the thing that I'm actively working on. And I think when you kind of enter that space, you are like kind of subconsciously telling yourself like it's okay to be done with this thing, because you are now really thinking about this other thing. And you may still have a ton of work to do on your current thing, and I think that's okay. Finish up as much as you can. But if you are like checked out, I guess, in a way, and now thinking about a new thing, that is, I think, a good time to kind of, close the book and be like, all right, my thing is done. I really want to get on to something else.
Yeah, I like that. Let's see. So we've got another question from the comments from Isaac. Isaac asks, when do you start playtesting a project? I've tried very early testing, but many players would comment on unfinished things. But waiting until a polished prototype sounds like bad news when playtesting can reveal a ton of flaws that will take lots of time to fix/improve.
Honestly, that sounds like maybe the playtesters had like incorrect positioning or expectations, because I think in a lot of ways, like, again, I've only made one game, but I envision like the next game that I'm going to be working on is going to need a significant amount of playtesting because it's like a multiplayer game, so that's going to be really, really important. I'm going to want to have people play it at literally every stage, like little squares moving around. Great, play it. Tell me how you think, because like in reality, that's really important to kind of get people's feedback when you are still working on it and it's in a place where you can make those changes. So I think when I was doing like I said, I mean, the first time I sent my game to somebody, it was literally like they had zero styling. It was like black page with white text. That was it. It was just like me writing. And I didn't even have like it was literally like so bare bones. But I think having like, if you're going to be doing like prototype, alpha, beta, like all of those different stages, I would say you should at least have a playtesting session in each one of those stages, because you want to make sure that you have people looking at specific things. So when you are in your prototype stage and you have someone playtest it, it'd be really important to tell them, okay, this is obviously a prototype. Do not comment on XYZ. I want your feedback on XYZ. And then that way you kind of force people to pay attention to really specific things so they can give their feedback on that thing and not say, yeah, well, his pants are clipping through his feet. Like, okay, we know. That's not something you're going to comment on. Don't mention that. So I don't know. I think maybe be more rude to your playtesters. Tell them, don't talk about this. Talk about this.
That's funny. I tend to let my playtesters talk about anything. I just, filter it. I just won't even. If they get caught up, if they're like if they're going down a tangent and they're like really focusing on that clipping through the pants, I'm like, okay, thank you. Now let's talk about something else. To answer this one from my perspective, Isaac, 100% test as early as possible and test throughout the entire process, even when you feel like you no longer need testing. It's just the difference is what you are testing changes. It's super early to test the core loop. What is the core functionality, the thing that the player is doing over and over again? Because if that's not satisfying, no matter how much you tack on, the game won't be satisfying. And so if you wait, until late in the process, like if you're making, let's say, like a beat 'em up, and you build your beat 'em up mechanic, and then you build an upgrade mechanic, and then you build a level select mechanic, and then you play test. Now you're testing 3 things and gaining feedback on all of it all at once. So it's all going to be kind of muddied, rather than just going with that very first gray boxed, ugly beat 'em up. Then you're getting just perspective on how it feels to punch somebody in the face. And so, you want to be deliberately testing throughout the whole process. I really love a 2-week test cadence. I actually really love using my play tests as an external pressure tool as my milestones. So I'm going to test every 2 weeks. And that means I got to get my build done every 2 weeks. Or I'm going to test once a month. That means I got to get my build in time ready for this play test. And I will schedule people out deliberately. Here's the date we're going to test. So that I am forcing myself to be ready.
I'll
all right.
say too, I was just going to quickly throw in some marketing tips. This is a really good opportunity. If you have like a group of people that really like your game, you can basically open up like a Patreon or some sort of, it doesn't have to be paid, could be some sort of member thing, a Discord, and offer people playtesting access where they will be kind of tapped first. Anytime that you have a new build, these people are going to be the ones that get to playtest it first. And they love that. People absolutely love playing games that are like secret. So it's a really good opportunity to get people that are excited to play something and are already a fan of what you do, and kind of grab that fan base and turn them into a little army. But
100% super powerful. Yeah, super powerful, like community building tool. It's also just like I say this all the time to my students: when you get somebody involved in your process, you are basically making their game dev dreams come true, because now they get to contribute to a project, even in a small way, where they give a piece of feedback and you listen to it. There are so many. I don't know actual stats. I'm sure like hundreds, dozens at least of people who dream of working on games, or at least kind of fancy it, and will never try it. And so being able to like be a part of your process, people adore that. It's one of the most powerful things you can even give to your community, for that matter.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, last question of the day is from Emian J. Emian says, on the point of using multiple engines, what if it can take a while to learn an engine and you feel like it gets in the way of actual game dev?
See, that's an interesting question, because that's something that I'm kind of like actively confronting. I would say it's going to go, and I don't know if I have a perfect answer for this yet, because I'm in it currently. It's going to go one of two ways for me. I'm going to do my best to learn Unreal, and then I may hit a point where I think, okay, I think I know enough, and it might be time to not be a solo dev and work with a programmer. Or I learn enough, and I'm like, okay, great, I'm going to start building this game while I'm learning, which is what I did for QUALIA. I was learning HTML and CSS while I was making it. I was story first, and then when I came to a point where it was like, it'd be really cool if I could do this one thing on this one page, I would Google it until I found an answer, and then I would learn how to do it for that one page, and then I would move on. I don't know if it's going to work that way in Unreal. Maybe programming is the same in any engine, but I think it's something where you'll have to kind of decide yourself if you feel like the thing that you're learning is becoming such an obstacle that it's getting in the way of you being able to do your thing in a way where you just could never be satisfied with. Not the am I happy enough, but literally like I can't even like do this properly. But you kind of are going to have to decide that for yourself, and I'm going to decide that for myself when I try and teach myself Unity. So we'll see.
I know that Unity has more hate lately than it has ever had before, but I'm still a Unity user and still kind of a Unity fanboy, because I've just used it for so long. It feels so easy. All right, that said, all right, I get it. Learning a new tool is going to take time and it's going to slow you down, but I absolutely believe in learning on the job. Like, pick a game, build it, learn as you build it. You'll run into a thing that you won't know how to do, and then you'll figure out how to do it. And that's it. That's how you make game, and that's how you learn to make game.
I mean, if that's how everyone does it, then I guess I'll be fine.
I really truly believe in it. I think like for formal education, for instance, I don't have a huge problem with formal education. I think that the nice thing that a higher education or a formal education gives you is a real plethora of resources to pull from. You get a nice base of a bunch of knowledge that definitely helps. But as far as learning a tool, there's no reason you can't just jump in, especially with at least those top 3 game engines, because there's so much support out there. You can Google how to do basically anything and get an answer. Frick, these days you can use AI and it will tell you exactly how to do things. Like, absolutely just learn as you build it. It's one of the best ways to learn. Pick a game. If it's, you do need to be a little bit careful about sort of the ambition of the game. Like, you're not going to be making an MMORPG as your first game in Unity. You're not even going to be making a regular old RPG. You'll probably make, a little beat 'em up or like a little platformer or something like that. But pick a game that feels reasonably scoped. There's lots of people who have opinions on that, and just start building it, and you'll learn as you go. And if things become a blocker to the process, then that's when you use your sort of creative expression and like creative problem solving to get around it. You don't need to do anything in any particular way, and designs can change to fit the effort needed to build them. So if you're like hitting a wall, you're like, I really can't figure out how to do this. How does your game work without that thing? Or how does your game work with an alternative design to that thing that you can solve, that you can build?
Yeah,
all right.
I think it ultimately will come down to like that again, like, are you happier having this game exist at all, or are you more happy waiting for this game to kind of happen if you have that magical billionaire or very bored programmer who will work for free, right? Like these imaginary hypothetical scenarios. Is it worth waiting for that and thinking that it could happen, which maybe, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, or is it better just making your thing at all and being satisfied enough with that version of the project existing?
Love that. Yes. All right. We are very much at the end of the episode. Before we go, though, we always like to do 2 things. So first things first, Sydney, could you give us, please, a homework assignment that the audience can do in the next week to practice some of what we talked about here today?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I think this sounds mean, but it seems like I'm going to tell you guys to make a game. No, I mean, like, maybe work on like a paper prototype of something that has absolutely no obligation to be turned into a real game. But think about something. I mean, I could give you, I guess, a really stupid topic. Okay, make a. I'll do it because I have a little alien plush guy on my phone. Make a paper prototype of a game about aliens. Only paper prototype. You don't have to turn it into a real game. But think about what you would do if you had a game about aliens in any engine, and then do it out on Post-it notes, and then say, okay, I'm done. I've thought about a new game with zero expectation of it being turned into a real thing and zero work. Spend like, I don't know, a day on that.
Awesome.
That's your homework.
I love it. Super easy homework assignment. Yes, and it's one all of you can absolutely do, and you'll gain some experience from. So make us a paper prototype somehow having to do with aliens, and then tag us at the Indie Game Academy on LinkedIn. And you can tag, is your name on LinkedIn Sydney Clara? Oh, say that again. You kind of cut out.
I said I don't really use LinkedIn. I'm there. But
okay. We'll tag whatever your account is down below, so you can tag Sydney as well. Post it up to LinkedIn. That way we can see you and celebrate you. All right. Before we say goodbye, is there anything you'd like to plug here, Sydney, or any last words of wisdom you'd like to grace us with?
No, I guess I'm going to need everyone's help. Everyone in this room who's watching this, you're now obligated to play test my multiplayer game because it's going to be the first time I've done something like this, and it's going to be really strange. So I would love your feedback and advice on it. So you all need to join my Discord or hit me up on Blue Sky or Twitter or anywhere I am so that I can tag all of you at once when I'm ready for you to play test my next game.
Amazing. Sounds good. We will, if you give us those links, Sydney, we will absolutely include some of them down below for you. Cool. All right. That's going to do it. Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Indie Game Lunch Hour. As always, we will be here again every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. So come and join us for the next one. Ask your own questions live. I think that does it for today. Sydney, thank you for being here. It's been an awesome episode.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you to those who asked questions, and thank you to those for listening. As always, if you enjoyed, who is one other person that you could send this along to who may enjoy too? All right. See you next week, everybody. Goodbye.
Game over.